So are you struggling to understand each of the different 49 processes that's covered on your CAPM exam or PMP exam? Well, in today's video, we're going to be breaking it down step by step so you can understand this and master it so you can pass your exam on your first try.
Hey everyone, now before we start, let me welcome you to my channel. My name is Alvin, and I'm an engineer turned project manager, and I passed my own CAPM exam in 2020 with above target in all domains, and I'm looking to pass the new PMP exam in 2021. So on this channel, I'm here to share the best tips and strategies that I'm using so you can pass your CAPM and PMP exam on your first try. So if you're new here to the channel and you want the best strategies to pass your exam and become certified in project management, then make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the bell icon so you don't miss out on any of my future upcoming videos. And by the way, make sure you download your free workbook containing more than 100 practice questions covering each of the critical knowledge areas on your CAPM and PMP exam. So make sure you grab your free copy over at alvinthepm.com/ebook. So in today's video, we're first going through an overview of the 49 PMBOK processes, and then we're going to review step by step, explaining what each of these processes mean and why they're important. And as a friendly reminder, on my website, alvinthepm.com, I post all of my exam strategies and study notes that I've used to pass my CAPM exam, as well as for the upcoming PMP exam. So if you head on over to my website, alvinthepm.com, I've created a page that outlines the purpose and the background for each process group, along with some of the key tips that helped me out when I was studying for my own exam. So make sure to check out the link down below where I break down each process group and why they're important. Let's first understand how projects are structured based upon the project management body of knowledge, also known as the PMBOK Guide. The PMBOK Guide divides project management into two categories: knowledge areas and process groups. Think of each knowledge area as representing a domain or an area of specialty that you need to know in order to manage a project. Now think of the process groups as the backbone of work that needs to be performed. They essentially give you a timeline for when certain work needs to happen. So according to the PMBOK Guide, there are 10 different knowledge areas: integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. Now, on the other hand, there are 5 process groups: initiation, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and lastly, closing. So when we initiate a project, we're starting a project and getting approval to formally kick off the project with our team. And so in planning, we're figuring out what the scope of our work will be and how we'll get the work completed. While we're executing a project, we're performing all of the work that we planned, and when we're monitoring and controlling a project, that's when we're reviewing and making sure that everything is going according to our plan. And finally, in the last stage of the project, we're closing out all of our activities. So the PMBOK Guide maps out each of these knowledge areas into these 5 process groups to form a total of 49 processes. Let me pause real quick. That's right, you heard me correctly. There are a total of 49 processes that you need to understand for your exam. Now I know you might be thinking that sounds really overwhelming just to have to memorize and study all of these different processes. But trust me, I was in your exact shoes when I was studying for my own CAPM exam, so don't worry. That's exactly why I made this video. Now in just a second, we'll review each of these 49 processes step by step so you know what exactly to focus on for your exam. So let's first start off with integration management. Think of integration management as the glue or the cement that holds everything together in your project. The first process is develop project charter, where you're formally authorizing a project and obtaining approvals through a project charter to begin assigning resources. Now, after the project charter has been created, that's when we move into the second process of developing the project management plan. It's in this process group that we're creating a really big document called the project management plan, which essentially combines the planning documents from other knowledge areas into one comprehensive document. So of course, after we finish planning, we're now ready to begin performing our work. And this leads us into the third process group, directing and managing our project's work. In this step, we're performing the work that we planned in our project management plan and implementing all approved change requests. And then we manage project knowledge. We create and use knowledge from our project into lessons learned to help make our project a success. And then we monitor and control our project's work. We track and review our project status and health to make sure everything is still going smoothly per our plan. So think of this as checking out our project's health and making sure that we're on track to still meet our goals. Then we perform integrated change control, where we review all change requests and decide whether these should be approved or rejected. And the last process is to close the project. This is where we're finalizing all activities to complete the project or phase. Now the next knowledge area is scope management. In scope management, we're defining what's inside and outside the scope of our project, defining the boundaries of what we'll be performing for our work. So the first process is plan scope management, where we're creating our scope management plan and defining our strategy to manage and control our project scope. Once we've figured out our plan, we're ready to collect our requirements. This is the step where we're figuring out the needs and the requirements of our stakeholders. Basically, what does everyone want to accomplish with this project? Now that we've collected our requirements, we can now define the project scope. Since we usually have limited resources, we of course won't be able to meet everyone's requirements. So this is the step where we establish the boundaries of our work and what's inside and outside the scope of our project. And then we go on to create a work breakdown structure. This is where we break down the scope of our work into smaller components known as work packages, which are much easier for us to manage and assign to our team. And then we validate scope, where we obtain our customers' formal acceptance of our project deliverables. And lastly, we control scope. In this step, we're monitoring the scope of our project's work to prevent any additional work from suddenly appearing without being approved through a formal change request by the Change Control Board. The key goal here is to prevent gold plating and the addition of any unplanned new requirements. So let's move on to the next knowledge area of schedule management. Here, we're managing the time-related activities of our project schedule and figuring out how long it takes to complete each activity that's outlined from our work breakdown structure, and also when we estimate for the entire project to be completed. So with the first process of plan schedule management, we're establishing the strategy, the approach for how we'll plan, create, and manage our project schedule. Just remember that at this point, you aren't creating your schedule yet, and instead, you're only planning out what your strategy will be. And afterwards, we define the activities. We use the work breakdown structure to identify the steps that we need to perform in order to complete the project's work and deliverables. Now that we've defined our activities, it's time to sequence the activities and place them in the correct order. And then we estimate the activity durations, meaning how long will each activity take. Using our estimated durations and the correct sequencing and relationships between activities, we can then develop the schedule. And lastly, we control our project schedule by monitoring the status of our project's work. How long is each activity actually taking versus what we originally planned? If our project is behind schedule and activities are taking a lot longer than we planned, then we'll have to manage any changes to the schedule baseline and figure out ways to bring the project back on track. So let's talk about the next knowledge area of cost management. Here, we're estimating what our budget will be, when financial resources need to be available, and also how much money will be needed to complete our project's work. So the first process is plan cost management, where we're determining how we'll estimate and manage our project costs and budget. The next step is to estimate costs, where we approximate the financial resources that we need to complete our activities. And using these estimates, we can determine the budget by taking the cost of all of the individual activities, sum them all up, also known as cost aggregation, to calculate the cost baseline. The last process is controlling the cost and seeing if we're overspending or underspending our budget. This is where you're comparing what you actually spent versus what you initially planned to spend. You'll be analyzing these differences and calculating cost forecasts using a technique called earned value analysis. We'll be covering that topic in a separate video, so if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe so you'll be notified once that video comes out. So let's move on to our next knowledge area for quality management. Quality can best be defined as, is what we're building meeting the requirements and specifications? In other words, is it fit for its intended use? An emerging approach throughout the years has been to minimize as much defects as possible and to adopt a Lean or Six Sigma philosophy, and of course to build quality into the process. Now, in the first process of planned quality management, we're determining the quality requirements and how we'll comply with these quality standards. In managed quality, we're translating our quality management plan into the activities and the work that we'll be performing to comply with our quality requirements. This step is primarily concerned with following the correct processes and meeting the correct quality standards. And lastly, we control quality by monitoring the performance of our quality activities and checking to see how well we are meeting the requirements. And by the way, if you're getting a lot of value out of this video, and if you'd like to see more videos to help you pass your CAPM and PMP exam on your first try, be sure to hit the subscribe button to this channel along with that bell icon so you don't miss out on any of my future upcoming videos, and be sure to smash that like button. Learn from my journey so you don't make the same mistakes as me. Now let's dive into resource management. This is about acquiring and managing human resources, such as labor, staffing, and employees, as well as physical resources, such as tools, equipment, and materials. The first process is planned resource management, where we figure out how we'll get all of the resources for our project. Once we figure this out, the next step is to estimate the resources that we need, both human and physical resources. And the next step afterwards is for us to acquire these resources. After our resources have been acquired, we can focus on the human aspect of our project and begin building and developing our team. So what that means is we're building the team so that everyone works well with each other. We're improving the team environment, their skill set, and interaction with each other to improve the project's performance. Now, of course, the next step is to manage the team by monitoring everyone's performance and giving feedback where needed and helping resolve issues. Keep in mind that this is different than the previous step because when you're managing the team, you're motivating and encouraging them so that everyone performs to their best capabilities. And lastly, we control resources throughout the project and monitor what we planned versus what we actually used. The next knowledge area is communication management. We're making sure that everyone is receiving the information they need and getting the right message at the right time. Remember that project managers typically spend at least 90% of their time communicating, so it's well worth the time and investment understanding this knowledge area and its role in project management. The first process group is planned communications management, where we're developing the strategy for how we'll communicate and share information with the stakeholders based upon their needs. And after we figure out our plan, we manage communications and distribute the project information to the team. And the last process is for monitoring communications to make sure that everyone is receiving the information they need. This is where we're making sure that the right information is being sent to the right people at the right time. So now let's talk about risk management. But before we dive into this, we have to understand the answer to the following question. What exactly is a risk? Well, a risk is an unexpected event, which if it occurs, could have a positive or a negative impact on the project. An example could be a delay in receiving parts from a vendor or a potential failure in test results. Just remember that risks are events that might happen. They're uncertain, and you're not exactly sure if and when they'll happen. Issues, on the other hand, are things that you know you'll be dealing with. The first process group is planned risk management, where we're figuring out how we'll perform risk management during our project, meaning what is our plan to manage and control our risks. And then we'll work with our team to identify risks which may impact our project. We'll take this list and prioritize them by performing qualitative risk analysis. We'll evaluate the risks based upon how likely they'll occur, as well as the magnitude or the impact that they have on the project. We'll filter through this list of low, medium, and high risks, and those which have the largest impact and probability are the ones we'll be focusing our efforts on. Now, after performing qualitative analysis, we'll perform quantitative risk analysis to numerically analyze the effects of the top risks on the project. Due to limited resources and budget available, quantitative risk analysis should be performed on only the top risks. So only do this on the risks which have the highest severity and impact. Next, we plan the risk responses and we determine how we'll respond to these risks, whether they're a positive risk, also known as an opportunity, or a negative risk, also known as a threat. And then we implement our risk responses if the risk actually occurs. And finally, we'll be monitoring risks throughout our project. In this process, we're continuously evaluating the effectiveness of our risk management activities and identifying any new risks which may occur. So now let's talk about procurement management. This knowledge area is focused on working with outside vendors to procure materials or resources which are external to your organization. The first process is planned procurement management, where we're determining how we'll procure our resources, performing a make versus a buy analysis, and identifying which potential vendors that we'll be working with. And afterwards, we'll conduct procurements, evaluating the responses from different sellers, finalizing which seller that we'll use for our project, and signing a contract with them. And then lastly, we're going to control procurements. We'll be monitoring and tracking our relationships with the sellers and keeping an eye on the vendor's performance as well as on their signed agreements. The final knowledge area is stakeholder management, where we'll be managing the engagement of all stakeholders impacted by the project. First, we'll be identifying all stakeholders on the project, and this includes anyone who may be impacted by or is involved with the execution of the project work. We're also analyzing the information for each stakeholder, such as their influence level and their interest level. And then we plan stakeholder engagement, and we determine the strategy for how all stakeholders will be engaged throughout the entire project. Now, this is important because we want to make sure that the project is as successful as possible by making sure that all appropriate stakeholders are in support of the project. And afterwards, we manage stakeholder engagement, in which we're communicating and working with the different stakeholders to meet everyone's needs, expectations, and helping address any issues. And lastly, we're monitoring stakeholder engagement and the relationships of all stakeholders, making sure that they're thoroughly being engaged based upon our original plan. And if not, we update our strategy for how we'll work with the different stakeholders. And that wraps up all 49 process groups that's covered on your CAPM and PMP exam. And as I mentioned earlier, be sure you download your free copy of your practice workbook with more than 100 questions covering each of the knowledge areas that we reviewed in today's video to help you pass your CAPM and PMP exam. You're going to get so much valuable information out of this, plus my own exam prep tips. So be sure you grab your free copy over at alvinthepm.com/ebook. Thanks again so much for watching. If you found a lot of value out of this video, and if you'd like to see more weekly quizzes and tutorials to help you pass your exam in project management, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of my future videos just like this. Smash that like button and share this with a friend. Help me get the word out about this channel so we can help others also become certified in project management. Until next time, I'm Alvin, helping you become a certified project manager, and I'll see you in the next video.